Welcome to Everyday Ethics. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz, and I am excited to be here, and I hope you are as well. Today, we're going to be discussing self-esteem. Now, I made a big point at the beginning when I started doing the show about how it was going to be about everyday ethics, the ethical situations that we find ourselves in, on a daily basis, things that we could apply. So self-esteem seems like, it's an abstract thing. But you should know self-esteem affects virtually everything that we do. It affects how we relate to ourselves. It affects how we relate to others. It affects our relationships. It affects how we behave at work. It affects the type of goals we're going to set. And it is one of the three fundamental values of the objectivist ethics. So it's a very, very important thing. Before I forget, please remember to like, share, subscribe the show. And afterwards, if you could just go to YouTube, make leave a little comment, whatever it is, it helps with the algorithm. It will be very much appreciated. And remember, we do super chats and super stickers, no pressure. So importantly, this is one of my favorite books of all time. The Psychology of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden. This book helped me immensely. We have FF Mormani in the show. FF, I am going to hit you up after the new year. I promise. And I will be interviewing you. Of course, if you consent. So Nathaniel Branden writes in the introduction, or rather the preface to the 32nd anniversary edition of the book, one of the most important things this book makes clear is that self-esteem is not a feel-good phenomenon. Our need of it is rooted deep in our nature, and if we understand that need, we understand that it cannot be satisfied arbitrarily or capriciously by just any pursuit that might happen to attract us. Self-esteem rests on the appropriate exercise of mind, and what that means specifically is examined in the pages that follow. We will see that self-esteem, rationality, perseverance, self-responsibility, and personal integrity are all intimately related. Indeed, they are. Self-esteem Katie Ellis with a super sticker. Thank you so much. $4.99. Thank you, Katie. So importantly, self-esteem is not something that you can just gain by telling yourself how wonderful you are or telling yourself how competent you are. Self-esteem cannot be built by having other people tell you you're great or that you are, my headphones are crooked, or other people telling you you're great, you're wonderful. Self-esteem is something that has to be built up. Yes, the way that we talk to ourselves matters. If we're constantly telling ourselves that we're horrible people, of course, that's going to affect our self-esteem. But importantly, our self-esteem also affects the type of things that we say to ourselves. So Nathaniel Branden defined early on self-esteem as the combination of self-confidence and self-respect. And he further elaborated that self-confidence is the belief that we can accomplish our goals in life, that we are capable of making it in this world. And self-respect is believing I am worthy. It's a feeling of self-worth. I'm worthy of achieving those things. So just think about this for a second, that if you remember that we're talking about an egoistic ethic. And also, folks, any questions are more than welcome. Feel free to ask, even if they aren't about self-esteem, as long as they're ethically relevant or good. Drinking diet ginger ale. So anyways, imagine if you were the type of person that had zero or very low confidence in your ability to do things. I don't drink from the mug when it's soda, so I just used a plastic cup. If you don't believe that you can accomplish things, you're unlikely to try them, right? Also, if you don't think that you're worthy of achieving things, why would you go and achieve things for yourself? Let me just send this over to my friend Mark here. And the answer, of course, is you wouldn't. Jim Valiant here Jenna Cleam gives $2 and says, "What day is this anyway?" It's Tuesday. Jim Valiant says, "It's the root of the courage and confidence to take a calculated new career risk, to leave a bad relationship, to trust one's own judgment, to assert one's own needs, boundaries, and ideas. Crucial is self-esteem, the root of all neurosis." We will talk about that in a second, Jim. But so suppose that you want to push for a promotion at work, but you don't believe that you're capable of doing the job. Suppose you are a assistant, or suppose you work at a let's use something simple. You are a cashier at a supermarket, and you want to go for the manager job, but you don't think you could do it. Would you try? Probably not. What if you thought that you were worthless, that you weren't, that you didn't deserve the benefits that life has to offer? Would you try? Probably not. So that's why it's important. So what can we do to actually build up our self-esteem? Brent McCall, my friend who is normally on the cup, but not today because I have the red plastic cup, came up with a phrase, and I don't know if it originates with him, but he called it incremental authentication, meaning that if you're trying to build your self-esteem, you don't start by setting the hardest goal to achieve, because you're likely to fail at it, and then that's going to hurt your self-esteem further. So what Brent came up with and what he said to do is start small, set goals for yourself, achieve them, set bigger goals, and keep going. So I may, say I'm going to the gym, or I want to start working out. I might say I'm going to work out for 20 minutes a day, 3 times a week. Now, once you start to do that, maybe you up it to 4 times a week, maybe 5, maybe you put your time up, so that you start to teach yourself that you can be trusted. Because as Nathaniel Branden said, self-esteem is the reputation that we build with ourselves. What if it was something else? What if it is math? You want to learn math. If you started off and said, "I'm going to master calculus by tomorrow," it's going to be an epic failure. But you know what? You could learn advanced multiplication, maybe algebra. Start with pre-algebra, algebra 1, then maybe go on to geometry, and as you continue to go, you will build that sense of efficacy. Now, the other component, remember, is your self-respect. This means that you're worthy, that you are a good person. Now, you want to have this actually applies to both components of self-esteem. You need to be realistic. If you judge yourself by the impossible, you're always going to come up short, and then you're going to have poor self-esteem. So you don't want to set impossible goals for yourself, and you also don't want to have unrealistic expectations of what it means to be a good person. And this, crucially, is why the Christian ethics and altruistic ethics in general are so harmful, because to the degree that you live it out, to the degree that you are sacrificing for others, to the degree that you are living for others, that's supposed to make you feel good. But meanwhile, you're harming yourself. So you have this inherent contradiction of trying to build your worth by acting like you're unworthy, by giving other people the benefit of your actions rather than yourself. So that's why the objectivist ethics is, or one of the reasons that it's so good, is because the standards are entirely realistic and entirely implementable. So, if you're judging yourself by your productiveness, by your rationality, by your degree of honesty, you can do all these things. But importantly, I would say that if you fail, if you have an ethical slip up, don't kill yourself over. I mean, don't beat yourself to death, but be honest, recognize you slipped, get back on the horse, keep going. Now, as you start to accomplish more, and as you start to behave more ethically, you will start to feel better about yourself. Importantly, again, reciprocal causation, Nathaniel Branden thought it. As you start to build, you'll gain self-esteem. As your self-esteem grows, you will accomplish more. As you accomplish more, your self-esteem will grow more. And so that is how you continue to get these things up, build yourself up. And, let me just give you an example as somebody that had horrible self-esteem. Self-esteem can manifest itself, poor self-esteem, in very different ways. So the way that I was very insecure with my girlfriends, which I ended up being very jealous. I wanted to impress other people all the time. The type of people that I wanted to impress was uh, dictated by my values, or implemented by according to my values. And so I ended up behaving very violently, and that was absolutely a function of my poor self-esteem. Somebody else's poor self-esteem may lead them to never try for the good job, never ask the girl for the date, or you may just think that you can't trust her, so you end up arguing all the time, or she doesn't trust the guy, so they keep arguing all the time. So the point is that this self-esteem, poor self-esteem, manifests itself in a lot of ways in being defensive, where somebody might say something, and you take it the wrong way. You take it as an insult or a shot at who you are, and now you get defensive. I once read a book called Confidence and Power in Dealing with People. I think the author was a guy named Les Gibbon. I don't know, I haven't read it in almost 30 years, but anyways, there was a saying in there that always stuck with me, and he says, low self-esteem means friction and trouble. Because when somebody has low self-esteem, it comes out. So you might say something like, oh, did you do something with your hair? What do you mean by that? Or when you have to be a little critical, because we do in life have to be critical, maybe critical of an employee, and you say, hey, you might want to try this, and the guy says, why? What's wrong with the way I'm doing it? Lee Frazier says her new TikTok is flopping. I'm sorry to hear that, Lee. So this low self-esteem really, really hammers us. So we want to build it. And as we build it, we start to get better. We start to be stronger. And this is absolutely tied to everyday ethics, because the more ethical we are, the more worthy we think we are. And remember, productiveness is a part of ethics. So the more productive we are, the more confident we are. And as our self-esteem grows, we feel the confidence to be more ethical also. So Jim Valiant asked a question back here. Is self-esteem the root of all neurosis? So there was a time when I would have answered that, yes, Jim, but I'm far what's the word I'm looking for? Less apt at this point to make universal statements like that, because then somebody comes with this one guy who had brain damage and that caused it. And you say, oh, look, it wasn't self-esteem or whatever. Maybe it's a biological or a chemical issue. So but I do think that self-esteem, poor self-esteem, is a cause of a lot of neurosis. Is it neuroses or neurosi? Whatever it is, poor self-esteem definitely contributes to that in a lot of different ways. Certainly, certainly does. But now I forgot what the hell I was going to say. I had something, I think it was brilliant that I wanted to say, and now I've absolutely forgotten it. Oh, self-esteem. I used to also think in terms of high and low self-esteem, but in my, I want to say, I think it was in my personality psychology course. It could have been abnormal psych. I'm not really sure. It doesn't matter. But there was an excellent article about how it's better to look at self-esteem more as fluctuating rather than high or low, in that somebody whose self-esteem is very inconsistent. So it can go in extremes, feels very good one day, very low the next. Now, somebody might describe that as low self-esteem because it fluctuates, and that's fine. But importantly, self-esteem can fluctuate. And also importantly, Branden actually talked about, I want to say in The Art of Living Consciously, how don't expect that you're always going to feel at the top with self-esteem. Don't beat yourself up for times when you feel bad about yourself, because it happens. There's always moments maybe where somebody feels a little bit like they're not up to the task, or maybe feeling like you're coming up short. And while that certainly sucks, I think it's a part of life. I don't think anybody feels confident all the time. I've certainly never met anybody like that. And I'm certainly not like that. Neuroses, Jim says. Neuroses. Let me back up. Jim Valiant also, okay, so Mr. Deagle says, I want to talk about Jim in a second. Mr. Deagle says, is doing something without a specific end goal good for self-esteem? For example, work out every day versus build a 30 centimeter arm. Well, there's the difference there is between process and outcome, right? And I think that, yes, I think you don't have to have a specific goal. I think that first of all, I think that working out every day is specific to an extent that it is a definite goal. You want to work out every day, but I think you should make it more specific than work out every day to work out for 20 minutes and definitely have designed workouts that you're going to do. And that way you don't end up playing games with yourself where you clap your hands for 20 minutes and say, wow, I've worked out. You definitely want to make it specific, the type of workout you're going to do and for how long. But I think that is specific. It's a process goal. It's not an end goal. And I think that really we need both to kind of act with purpose in this world. So I think process goals are good, and I think end goals are good, and I think that they both help with building self-esteem. Where's Jim? Jim says that Christianity messed with his head. Jim, that's interesting because I think that even those of us who weren't raised religious, the religious ethic that is sort of dominant in society, I think mess with a lot of our heads so that we think that it's wrong to look out for our own best interest. Just think about this. If I am supposed to live for other people where I can't profit, profit is bad, but if I give my earnings to somebody else, what's the message there? The message is that other people are worthy of my labor, of my effort, of my talent, of my creativity, but I'm not. So if I don't think that I'm worthy of the fruits of my own thinking and action, what does that do to self-esteem? Right? Or the idea that I should turn my other cheek if I'm punched in the face, or forgive 70 times 7, which it says to do in the New Testament. And then as we try to break away from those, that stuff's still embedded. It doesn't just disappear like this because we want it to, and it'll creep back up, in our, hey, Daniel, in our daily lives. And that is definitely a harmful thing. And it's by no means an easy task to break away from that. I remember I had a book, the hell was it called? Growth Through Reason by Albert Ellis. And what it was a lot of his case therapeutic sessions, like verbatim accounts of his therapeutic sessions. And there were people that was the problem, that the religious ethic was so embedded in them that they would hate themselves for things. There was a guy, and I don't remember this specifically, but I think it was the religious thing. Been a long time. A guy was afraid that he was gay, and he wasn't actually gay, but the idea that he could be gay so haunted him because he thought that would make him this horrible, disgusting person. So what Ellis had to do was get him to overcome the idea that would make him a horrible person. And once the fear went away, he wasn't gay anyway. But the first step was to see that there was nothing wrong with it if he was, that it was fine if he was gay, that was nothing to fear. It was nothing to be ashamed of. And I just, you think about how many people out there live lives like that, where they are afraid to be themselves, afraid to show what they really are because of some religious judgment out there, some irrationality, some, faith-based view of how we ought to behave is just hammering people. And, if it affects your mind, it obviously affects your actions. So, what we really want to do is cultivate authentic self-esteem based on reality, based on what the world actually is, not based on faith. So, I mean, if I want to learn to build a house, I'd better learn, some geometry. I better learn how different types of wood go together. Praying is just not going to get it done, right? I mean, you could think of probably a million examples like that. Jenna says she would like some ginger ale. Ginger ale is delicious, I must tell you. I've had a bit of an upset stomach, which is why I actually went to the ginger ale. I also have insomnia, as a lot of you probably know. I have a terrible time sleeping at night. Um, I don't know what to do about that. If anybody's got any good suggestions, please let me know. Lee Frazier wants a kebab. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but we'll roll with it. Any of your questions, by the way, feel free to ask. I'm here to answer, here to work, with each other so that we can grow together. That's the whole point of this show, so that we can learn, we can grow, we can be better people, and we can flourish. That is, Oh, Cosmic Wolf, by the way, I did get your message and I do have some suggestions for you. I will be getting them to you before the end of the night. I promise. It's funny because self-esteem, when I first got this book, I want to say in 2004, maybe 2005. And Brent read it. I don't think he'd mind if I share the story. And, we would do laps in the prison block. And as we were walking around, Brent just had this miserable, miserable look on his face. And I went and I'm talking to him and he got mad at me because of the book, because the book was hitting him hard on his own poor self-esteem, that he said, I don't know anybody who has self-esteem like this. You certainly don't. I don't. And he was angry. But we hashed it out as we usually did. We had a lot of discussions about this. And my point was, we're reaching for an ideal. We don't have to be there yet. Maybe we'll never get there, but when you strive to get there, you certainly get better and better and better. It was one of my all-time favorite stories. So powerful is the idea of self-esteem, and so powerful it is when we have poor self-esteem, that just somebody pointing out some of the sort of indicators of low self-esteem, really bothered Brent a lot. One of the big indicators of poor self-esteem is a preoccupation with what others think about us. Concerned with how others are judging us. Do they like me? Do they not like me? Do they hate me? Are they going to gossip about me? What are these people saying about me? Brandon actually had a phrase for that, social metaphysicianism. It's similar to what Ayn Rand called a second-hander, where people think that they're going to get their value from other people. The day of my life, I shouldn't say a day because it's not exactly a day, but coming to realize that the thoughts people have in their heads have no power over me and are irrelevant to my life has been one of the greatest lessons that I've absolutely ever learned, ever. Because when you're just preoccupied with it and you're sitting there and you're thinking about it, oh my God, what's this guy thinking? Now they're dictating your behavior because you're acting in a way to please them rather than acting in accordance with what's right, according with reality, according to what's in your best interest. You're acting according to your perception of what these other people are thinking. And that is absolutely very, very, very self-destructive. And, Brandon actually says in the book, maybe it's not in that book, might be another book, that the person of self-esteem upon meeting somebody new doesn't worry about what that person thinks of him. He worries about what he thinks of the other person. What is my judgment of this other person? Is this person bringing value to my life? Or does this person have the potential to bring value to my life, rather? Is this a relationship worth having? Do I want to expand my contact with this person? Not, oh my God, will this person hate me? What is this person going to think of my shoes or my haircut or my Old Town sweatshirt? And Mr. Deagle says there are mental tricks for falling asleep. I don't know if they work because I haven't tried them, but they might work for you. They're about breathing and imagination. Jim Valiant says, doesn't excessive self-esteem lead to narcissism, self-obsession, a lack of empathy? Don't criminals generally have too much self-regard? No, Jim, they do not. Criminals are some of the lowest self-esteem people that you will ever come across. Which is why they fly off the handle, which is why they get so defensive, which is why they get so angry. At least it's a big part of it. And no, because remember something, authentic self-esteem is rooted in rationality, and rationality means how we are dealing with reality. So if excessive self-esteem in that regard would be impossible, because if my regard for myself is above what reality is actually indicating, then I'm not being rational. So my assessment is irrational. And if my assessment is irrational, I don't actually have self-esteem. Narcissism is an interesting thing. Actually, I would say that the people that are most self-obsessed are, again, the people with low self-esteem, because they have to try to build themselves up constantly. They don't feel comfortable in their own skin to just go out and relax. Also, I think that self-esteem can lead to more empathy, because if I feel good about myself and I understand the value of a human life, then I'm more likely to value other human lives. I'm more likely to not want to hurt other people the way that I hurt. If I have low self-esteem, I want other people to feel good. I want other people to grow. I want other people to succeed in this world. But narcissism, anybody that's in the audience, you should look up the narcissistic paradox, because narcissism is the extreme example. Narcissists, while they, may tout how wonderful they are, how great they are, if you puncture that, they will explode. They will demonstrate a real lack of confidence. I once had a cellmate that met the diagnostic criteria for narcissism, although he never got diagnosed. I still was sure as hell. I know there's no doubt in my mind. Put it that way. And so I worked for a counselor, and the counselor gave me what's called a loaner radio, a boombox type of thing, stereo system that we put in the cell, but it didn't work. When we got it in the cell, it didn't work. And then that counselor was transferred to another unit and forgot all about this thing. So what the cellmate told me to do was, he said, what you should do is say this is yours and say it broke, and then they'll let you get a brand new one sent in. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that because, the counselor loaned it to me. It's not mine. And he said, so what? The counselor's not going to know. Now, this guy was a professed Christian, professed change person and all that stuff. So he said, well, why won't you do it? And I said, well, I said, my integrity is why I won't do it. Now, mind you, I never once said to him, you're unethical, you're a jerk. I just said, I won't do it because of my integrity. He knew that implicit in that was a judgment of him, and he went berserk in the cell. He told me, well, then you should never break any rules at all. Don't do anything, blah, blah, blah. He went bonkers about this. But if you just talk to this guy on a regular basis, you'd think, wow, this guy has a really high opinion of himself. But if he really had a high opinion of himself, my implicit judgment of him that I didn't even express wouldn't have bothered him in the least. So I really hope that you're able to see how global self-esteem is. And one of my global is the ramifications, how it affects our lives in so many different ways and in so many different areas, that it's absolutely crucial that if we're going to have happy lives, that we build our self-esteem. And the way to build our self-esteem is a commitment to being rational, putting in effort to achieve our goals, behaving ethically. We might call that the triumvirate of building self-esteem: rationality, productivity, being ethical. That's what we do. We will build it. All right, everybody, we're running out of time rapidly. But I must say, I appreciate all of you. As always, I appreciate the questions. I appreciate the comments. I appreciate the views. Now, please, if you will, like, share, subscribe, go to YouTube and leave a comment. I will very, very, very much appreciate it. So I will be back tomorrow at 2:30. I won't be doing a show Thursday, and I haven't decided on Friday yet but I absolutely will be here tomorrow. So 23 and a half hours from now, I'll be here. Remember to check out the Capitalist Corner with me and with Mark Pellegrino and I also every day at 12 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 Pacific. But until tomorrow, everybody, be ethical.